Hi everyone, it's William with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary series. I have the usual caveat that my dog is chewing some treats, so better to keep him quiet anyway. We'll see if it works and put up with the chewing noise, I hope. So I apologize for having left you hanging, in a matter of speaking, if you were waiting for the next video. Not that I'm conceited enough to think that yes, that people were just waiting for the next video. But anyway, I lost my phone and I wasn't very proactive. There were lots of things going on the last few days, and so happily I finally found it in the back seat of my car. I'm not sure how it ended up there, but we're back in business anyway. So today we're actually doing, again, not a diary entry, but a letter written by Dmitri to Maria. The date is the 12th of March, 1909. So we're done with 1908. Our recap, the final letter of 1908 was a Christmas letter, and in it Dmitri described the gift that he sent to his sister, a pendant necklace and a vase or vase that he thought she might like to convert into an electric lamp. Looking back on that, I think something that I didn't note before is that he doesn't say anything about where either of them were, who they were celebrating with. Obviously with Maria it would have been her husband, but did they go to the parents' house? What did they do? And also with him, who did he spend the holiday with? Did Ella come to St. Petersburg? Was she still there? Did he go to Tsarskoye Selo? I don't know. I don't think it was anything unusual, or he would have described it to Maria, but that was his first year living, not in Moscow, but in St. Petersburg as a young man, and so it would be interesting to know. Anyway, I'll stop rambling and we can get on with this, although I want to say this letter was already translated, and since I was short of time this week with various things going on, I chose it for that reason. I don't have to translate it. But it's not the first 1909 letter, and in fact there's an earlier January 1909 letter that gives the whole story of one of the issues in this letter about Swedish decorations for Russian troops. And so we will be doing that in the next video. So anyway, if you're interested in what is behind this whole topic, you'll find out very soon. Here we go. Petersburg, 1909, 12th March. Dear Maria, it's been so long since I wrote you that I hate to even think about it. Thanks very much for your last letter, which blank me God knows when, but which said in short that it is possible for the lower ranks of the combined regiment to receive Swedish decorations. Thank you for arranging that. Naturally, Papa came here after the death of poor Uncle Vladimir, and it goes without saying, brought the Countess with him. During the first week of Lent, we couldn't even think about fasting. There were dinners every night, so the time passed very quickly, and I was very sorry when they left. My relationship with the Countess is the same. Naturally, we use the formal you with each other, and she says very little about that. Thank God Papa was in a splendid mood the whole time, although a little ill. We saw the Ignatievs. They came to tea almost every day, along with many other guests. Let me be frank with you, Maria. I don't like them, i.e. the Ignatievs. Well, he's tolerable, but his wife, she pretended the whole time to be your very best friend, while claiming that you had lost your popularity, that you spend a lot of time with her, that you talk to her all day on the telephone and don't want to know anybody but the Ignatievs. I'm sure at least half of that is untrue. He pestered me for a long time with offers to pass along anything I needed to send to you or anything I needed to say, etc. Okay, I'm going to make an executive decision here and decide not to finish up this letter because it is a long one, and I sort of injudiciously thought that I could get through the whole thing. Maybe I could, but we'll see because there's a lot to talk about. Okay, to begin with, as I said, we'll be covering this whole issue of the Swedish decorations. The combined regiment was a combined guards regiment in a special one in Russia. So Dmitri will be filling us in on all of that and about this request for the medals. Duke, there goes my dog. So Paul had just been in Russia in November for the funeral of his brother Alexei. Now his brother Vladimir has died, Grand Duke Vladimir Alexandrovich. He was, what was he? He was 61, as I think I said last time, and Alexei had been 58, and they both died of natural causes. Alexander III, if I'm not mistaken, was in his 40s when he died. So they did not live long, these brothers. Sergei and Pavel, of course, we don't know how long they would have lived if they'd been able to live out their days and die of natural causes. Dmitri, of course, died at 50. And I know Kirill Vladimirovich died really pretty young too as well, I think. Anyway, yes, apparently Vladimir died of a cerebral hemorrhage, a brain bleed, and yeah, 61, quite young. He was this really larger than life figure, as I'm sure all of you know. He even finds his way into the pages of one of Proust's novels as this, big, boorish but fun figure going to the society parties in Paris. Anyway, Paul, who, as I said, had so recently been in the country for Alexei's funeral, is now back for Vladimir's funeral, and this time he brings his wife with him. Dmitri refers to her as the Countess. She's not yet Princess Palais. She's Countess Hohenfelsen, a foreign title that was given to her. And I don't know if she was banned from coming to Russia in November of the previous year, along with Paul. And if this time Nicholas relented and said, okay, she can come, or if it was a matter of her just, for whatever reason, not coming with Paul the previous time. This time she's with him. And yeah, Dmitri and Maria, both of them at this point have had to get to know their stepmother because they've spent time with Paul and the family in Paris. But they have this kind of agreement between themselves that they're not going to like her. And they always sort of disparage her a little. This isn't at all bad in this instance. And I think, they became fond of her. I tend to think that Dmitri, prior to Maria, maybe, he ended up calling her Mamichka. We'll see how that develops. Anyway, yes, Paul. Paul is a retiring fellow, but he lives like a Grand Duke, much more so than Dmitri ever did, in the sense that he has the sort of open house, the table. You come for lunches and teas at his house. The hospitality is always there. He's living, in the way that most of the Grand Dukes did. So Dmitri never did that. Dmitri was very young and he was unmarried before the war and the revolution came along. So we don't know if he'd been married. He probably would have done that too. So he talks about there being time passes quickly. We can't even think about fasting because of the fact that there's The palace is full every night. He talked in a previous diary about as soon as as soon as Paul left Russia and went back to Paris in November 1908, the palace was just shut down, and Dmitri had his apartment, and that was about it. But now, obviously, this is Paul's palace. It's opened up again. They're having, Dmitri says, dinners every night. Guests for tea every day. Okay, the time passes quickly. He doesn't tell us whether he particularly liked dinners and that sort of thing. Okay, so at this point, his relationship with Olga Hohenfelsen is the same. They are not using the informal you. Dmitri and Maria are not allowing that. I think the Countess would happily have been with the informal you, but he notes that she's not saying anything. She's saying very little about that. So, she's trying not to escalate things, would be my guess about that. Thank God Papa is in a splendid mood, or was in a splendid mood the whole time. Mood is a word Dmitri uses a lot because he's so sensitive to it. If somebody is in a bad mood, then Dmitri, it has a big impact on him. Just like a person with seasonal affective disorder would be impacted by the gray weather, Dmitri is impacted by people's moods. We see that going very clearly, going back to his adolescent diary entries, well, his earlier adolescent diary entries, because he is 17 in this one. Was Paul a moody person? I don't know. I think he was sort of, a kind person, but everybody is in a bad mood sometimes. And Dmitri is just very happy that he's in a splendid mood, although a little ill. I've never been quite on top of what the illness was that Paul suffered. I think it was some kind of stomach thing, and maybe at some point even stomach cancer, but he never had great health during this period of time. Okay, so the Ignatievs, that's the other big thing in this particular letter. The Ignatievs, what an interesting couple, or at least he was interesting, and it sounds like she is a bit of a character as well. So the Ignatievs were a big aristocratic family. This branch of the Ignatiev family were very much at court, real aristocrats. And there are several of them. There's an Aleksei Alekseyevich, there's an Alexei Nikolaevich, there's Nikolai, there's lots of them. This particular one was Aleksei Alekseyevich Ignatiev. He was a general. He wrote memoirs called 50 Years in Service. They're absolutely fascinating. He was the military attaché in Sweden at this time, and visiting home, obviously. So he was one of the prominent figures in the Russian community in Sweden that Maria was spending time with. He and his wife, the wife's name was Yelena Vladimirovna, maiden name Ochotnikova. I don't know where the stress is on that. The fascinating thing about them is that after having been a diplomat in Paris on behalf of the Soviets, he made that transition after the revolution and continued to live abroad in France. He went back and he became a very loyal Soviet. And so he wrote his memoirs from that perspective, looking out back at his past life and at Imperial Russia in a critical way, to say, look at how stupid and silly and exploitative we all were. But very, very smart man. He'd graduated from the General Staff Academy, has a lot of interesting things to say about ideas at the General Staff Academy back when he was there. So I strongly urge you, if you can find it, to read it. Although as far as I know, it hasn't been translated. So that's a problem. Actually, I should translate that. And he writes in these memoirs that I'm talking about. He writes about Maria in Sweden, And he writes about how these issues of how she came across to people as this sort of frivolous and arrogant young woman, and so she wasn't popular. And I'm thinking, well, she was 18. She was in completely over her head among strangers, and if she was trying to perform this role, and if it ended up seeming to people like she was very sort of smug and abrasive, well, I think she absolutely was not. It's hard to imagine a girl in that situation being so, but trying to look like she was. But this is interesting. Now, Dmitri says, well, the wife is claiming to be claiming to me that she is your bestie, that she is your best friend, and at the same time she's sort of putting you down and saying you've lost your popularity in Sweden, and so you're spending all your time with her and yakking with her on the phone all day and don't want to know anybody else, and so anyway, the fun thing about that is that Dmitri then writes to his sister, I'm sure at least half of that is untrue. So is he taking a dig at her, or does he himself is he less generous toward her than even I am, and saying, okay, come on, sis, you need to make more of an effort. Anyway, I will leave it there. We can go back and finish the next part up tomorrow for sure. I'm going to keep a grip on my phone. So I hope to see you next time. Bye.